Hey, I'm Sven Masterson, one of the co-founders and mentors in the Mentoring Men community, and I show men how to transform painful, broken, stuck, and dying relationships into deeply connected, thriving, intimate, and passionate relationships. And in this video, I want to talk to you about something that happened to me today. I got up around, 7, and like most mornings, I made some coffee, got our wood stove going, and just was enjoying the quiet, reflective time when moments later I heard a cacophony of chainsaws start up, like a dozen of them. Now, I knew a neighbor was supposed to have some tree work done, and so I figured maybe that was what was going on. But the chainsaws kept getting louder and louder and louder, and I realized that they were coming up the hill. My property sits on like a mountainside, and I could see these bright safety vests kind of coming up my way. And I remembered, I knew these guys were going to come. They're clearing power line right of ways, and I went back to my business. A short while later, my wife got up, and my daughters, 3 daughters at home, and they all proceeded to look out the window and with a little bit of distress. What's going on? What are they doing? And my wife just couldn't get over that these guys were out there standing on our property, cutting these nuisance trees and limbs and whatnot. And she's like, "Aren't you going to do something?" And I said to her, there's nothing to do. I talked to them over the summer. I knew their plans. They coordinated with me. They got my approval. I know why they're there. And what they're doing is beneficial. They're keeping what's called sumac trees out here from growing up and hitting the power lines. That keeps people from getting electrocuted. It keeps power from going out. They're cutting limbs that could fall on the power lines, and there's nothing there to do. And I told her this, and she sees it. She continues to look at things with great intensity and watching every move these 10 men were making on our property. Now they're out there and they're cutting a new thing. Aren't you going to do something about this? And I remind her again, there's nothing going on here. This is not an invasion. This is a tree company doing the work that I had already communicated with them about doing. They had my approval, they had my consent, and what they were doing was good. But this was not satisfactory to my wife in the moment. And so then she noticed that they are standing by their trucks on our driveway. My daughters noticed the men spitting. My daughters noticed one man smoking, another man eating donuts, and they're just getting in a frenzy about what these men in this tree company are doing, none of which is bad stuff. And so, there was a time when this kind of thing would have caused me distress and anxiety because I felt like my wife was really and truly asking me to do something. But, I've since learned that's not the case. In reality, men and women are just different. And so my wife is such, and women I know in general, including my daughters, they're just highly sensitive to things coming into their awareness. And I didn't know this about the feminine a long time ago. And so I used to see this as problematic. I used to see it as a problem to fix. What I didn't realize was I was judging my wife for being just herself, just for noticing what can be noticed. Because in my mind, I didn't need to worry about that. I didn't need to worry about the tree company. Why is she obsessing about the tree company? And I would experience some form of judgment. Oh, that's undesirable that she's like that. I wish she would stop. I would have an emotional reaction to her emotional reaction that would just sow discord. It would cause us problems. And so what I've learned since is this is just how women are. Women notice stuff. And it doesn't mean that they're being bad. They're not behaving badly. They're just behaving naturally. And so what is the problem then? The problem is the meaning that I give their behavior. You see, if I judge their behavior as they shouldn't be doing that, you're judging when you're saying should and shouldn't, when you want somebody to behave differently than they are, you're judging. You're looking at somebody and saying who should do what. or who is what because they do this. And when I learned to let all that go, it restored peace to my life. I like to think of my wife and women in general a little bit like smoke alarms, right? I have a copious amount of smoke alarms in my house, and they're very sensitive. And oftentimes I'm just creating a piece of toast, or we have something in the oven that has dripped a little bit too much. The next thing you know, the smoke alarms are going off. And they're going off because they're sensitive to smoke. The smoke alarm is not misbehaving. It's doing exactly what it's designed to do. It just happens to be sensitive at that level because it needs to be. And I've really come to appreciate this about my wife, the women in my life, that the women I know, the females I know, are highly sensitive to things coming into their domain, into their sphere, into our kingdom as a family. And sometimes like today, the things they're very sensitive to, they're having kind of the same reaction a smoke alarm would to burning cheese in the oven. Even though they're behaving like that, it's good that they are, because there are times when things are coming into our orbit, our kingdom, our awareness, that they really need to be that way. And I've really come to appreciate that. But is it frustrating at times? Yeah, for sure. Now, does your wife ever do this? Sometimes we could be driving down the road and she'll slam her arm into my chest and she'll say, "Honey!" And I jump out of my skin thinking we're about to be hit. And she'll say, "I forgot to put lipstick on." Or something like this, right? And it always gets me because my wife sometimes can just be all throttle or all brake. And this is just the feminine I've noticed. It's like some women can just be super intense in how something hits their awareness, and it comes into their awareness and they need to share it. They want to share it, but they want to share it in a way that's unique to them. And this used to drive me nuts. I used to get angry at my wife for doing this, not realizing she's just being herself. I'm the one that's interpreting what's going on as being a problem. Why do I do that? Because in my brain, when somebody shouts at me and slams her arm into my chest, it's go time. It's time to kick some ass or do whatever. But for her, it's just her intensity sometimes. And so now I've really learned to appreciate this, because sometimes we are driving down the road. She'll slam her hand into my chest and say, "Honey, watch out, there's a car," or whatever, or I'm not paying attention. Now that's rare, and yet sometimes, you know what, if I'm honest and transparent, she has said that at a necessary time that has maybe prevented an accident or prevented me from hitting somebody, etc. And so I have really learned to be thankful that my wife is a bit like a smoke alarm. But with a smoke alarm or with a woman in our life, we have to also appreciate that they're fine-tuning, the thing that makes them very sensitive to an infiltrator in our kingdom also means that they're going to have false alarms. And it's okay that they do. Now, here's the thing as a man, and here's like a real growth opportunity. I get to decide how I want to respond to that. I could sit there and try to change my wife's perception, which is what I spent 20 years doing. I try to get her to respond to the tree company kind of things like a man would, not realizing I don't want her to be like a man. I didn't marry a woman I wanted to be like me or masculine. That would make one of us unnecessary, but also I enjoy the feminine. So why am I trying to change her? Why am I judging how she is? And I learned to appreciate it. And instead, I learned to just employ a really simple metric, because sometimes she wants me to do things. Aren't you going to do something? And I would feel this pressure. Well, she wants me to do something, but there's nothing to do. And I would begrudgingly go do something because I felt like I had to. I didn't realize then I was actually living in a state of powerlessness and dependency. And the reason I felt like I had to was I lived in this stupid lie that we're promoted in culture, which is a happy wife makes a happy life. That's a lie, fellas. It's not true, right? My job is not to make my wife happy. My job is to walk with integrity, to know what I value, to be clear about it, to hear my wife's input, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I have to do things that are still authentic to me. And so today, I had that experience. My wife said, "Aren't you going to do something?" I checked internally. Hearing her perspective, okay, I appreciate what's going on here. Is there really anything in my value system and in my awareness that really needs to change? No. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go with what's authentic and true. I'm going to not judge her for her perspective. I'm not going to tell her it needs to change. I'm simply going to act according to my value system. Now, why can I do that today that I couldn't do 20 years ago or even 10 years ago? Because I'm not afraid of my wife's emotional condition or reactions. If she's really upset with me for not doing something when there's nothing to do, not my problem. I don't need to make her emotional condition or state different. Why? Because there's nothing wrong with her emotional state or condition. She's just experiencing her thinking like we all do. And how she interprets and responds to the world is her business. She's a mature adult. If she interprets these things as a catastrophe of some kind waiting to happen, and she doesn't appreciate my perspective, it's not my position to tell her she's wrong. It's not my position to try to convince her to think or feel differently. I can love her, I can support her, which is exactly what I did. I can offer reassurance, and I can do all that while authentically holding on to what's true in my understanding. Because the moment I try to do some what I call horse trading, which is I'm going to go against my integrity and authenticity because I want her to be happy. When I do that, I'm actually experiencing dependency. And why would I do that? Because I'm afraid that if I don't placate and appease my wife, that she'll stop giving me whatever it is I depend on her for. Now, in our marriage, what has really led to a beautiful relationship is taking away those dependencies. Now, I love my wife's support, but support and dependency, if you watch our other videos, two totally different things. While I love when she's supportive, and I love to be supportive to her, that's not dependency. I don't entrust her with things that only she can manage. That would be a horrible idea, and it would lead us to resentment and frustration, and it would lead me, in conditions like that, to doing that kind of horse trading I don't want to do, where I exchange something that's true and an act of integrity, and I go in the other direction than I want to in order to appease and placate. That's the path to a lot of suffering in a relationship. So here's my takeaway. If you want to really enjoy a happy, connected, intimate relationship, it's first of all, stop judging the woman in your life for being feminine. Stop judging her uniqueness. Stop judging how she responds, reacts, etc. Let her be. Just accept that she is who she is. Now, that doesn't mean I don't need boundaries for myself. I'm not saying approve everything that she does. Just look at it without making a moralistic judgment about how she is. How do you know you're making a moralistic judgment? When a moralistic judgment is whenever you say, who is what? My wife is X. That's a moralistic judgment. It's for you to ascribe a moral weight to her behavior. Just stop. You don't need to do that. In fact, it's ruining your connection. And if you ruin your connection, you ruin your intimacy. So stop doing that. That's the first step. Stop putting a meaning to the way your wife is being and just observe it. Observe it. Understand your feeling and reaction to it and what that means about your needs. Because when you and I are having emotional reactions to other people, we're experiencing our needs. But we've been trained, you might even say indoctrinated, to blaming what's outside of us for what is actually ultimately just showing me that I have a need to address. And I've learned to really cultivate that skill within me so that when I have an emotional reaction, instead of blaming other people, I understand, oh, that's showing me something like a mirror. I'm having an experience with myself. What can I learn there? What is the true need I want here? I want to feel safe. Maybe I want to feel appreciated and accepted. I want to feel comfortable. It could be lots of stuff, right? My emotions are my business, not my wife's, and your wife's are her business, not your business. We don't own each other's emotions. We own our own. And so that's the second step, is to learn to stop judging, manage your own emotions, understand that your emotions are about you, not other people, and they can tell you a lot about yourself. And then lastly, just be committed to integrity, authenticity, and only doing what is truly a reflection of that in your life. So that if your partner says, if you loved me, you'd do this, you'd go hassle the tree guys. Now, my wife didn't say this, but this kind of thing used to happen to me. If you loved me, you'd go hassle the tree guys because they're out there eating donuts on our driveway. Is that a problem for me? Absolutely not. Did I already give them permission to be there? Yes. Do I care if they're eating donuts? No. And so I'm not going to go hassle a tree guy eating a donut on my driveway, no matter what my wife says, because it would be incongruent, inauthentic, and out of integrity for me to do so. And while it might solve a momentary emotional dilemma that my wife has, it would create long-term resentment that I'm not a trustable man because I'm not a man with integrity. Now, I just cracked the lid on some of this stuff, and my intent is not to solve every side trail that we could go off in this conversation, but just to get you thinking about some of the ways that you relate to your partner, you relate to yourself, you relate to things like emotions in other people, emotions in yourself, and really to get you just beginning to explore some of these things. Now, in the Mentoring Men community, where I serve with other mentors and help men around the world, we talk about stuff like this all the time. And we talk about it in a way that is vigorous, it's challenging, but deeply loving and accepting and supportive of one another. It's in a private men's-only community where we are all dedicated to living our best as men, having our best relationships, and creating good things in the world. Now, are we successful at this? Yes. In fact, a lot of the men that come into the Mentoring Men community come in there with relationships in distress, broken relationships, about to get divorced, about to get separated, very unhappy men in sexless marriages, men who are just thinking about calling it quits, throwing in the towel. We get all kinds of men, and we help all of them improve their lives. And improving their lives generally, in about 8.5 out of 10 men will improve their relationships. And we talk about these kind of subjects and others pretty much all day, every day. And so if you're interested in the things I said in this video, or you're just interested in actually having a better relationship and learning how to do that by people who actually have dedicated real life experience doing so, who are living in good relationships and who have helped other people do that, I think you should check us out. It's actually something I think you'd be really surprised and really pleased to know there are men in the world having the kind of conversations that you see in our community. Now, we don't just let anybody into our community. We want to know you first. We want to talk to you. We want to get to know your story, and we want to make sure that we're a good fit for each other. And so if you would like to begin that conversation, I would invite you to look in the description below. You're going to see a link where you can set up a call with myself or one of the other mentors in our community. You can fill out this quick form. It takes maybe 7 minutes to just fill in the information. We're not going to ask you stupid questions. We ask you really about your background, what's going on in your life, that kind of thing. And then you'll get a notification of somebody scheduling a call, a link to a calendar, and we'll have a complimentary call where we just get to know each other. And so I want to invite you to do that, to get started, to reach out, and let's continue talking about things like, the way women respond to trade companies and what do we do with our emotions and whatnot. And until then, I will see you soon. Take care.